Hi everyone, welcome back to another video on my channel. So I briefly want to talk about studying the humanities versus studying science, and why I am trying to change my study plans. So I've been studying science since, school, and I started to pursue it a few years ago at university level with the Open University, and it made a lot of sense to me to do that. I was always good at science at school, and then as I left school, I went to college, and I pursued science there, and I was always, I always got really good grades in science subjects, and it was kind of easy for me to, mostly easy for me to understand, I guess. And then I went and got a job in a lab, and I've been working in labs pretty much ever since. I currently work in a chemistry lab, and I like my job, and I just thought that the time was now to go back to carry on with my studies, because I did take a very long break and I always intended to go back. I just struggled to find the time because I was working 12-hour shifts, and there's a few other reasons as well. So I, always, because of that that point at school where I was good in this field, was kind of more the reason why I continued to do that. And I do hold an interest in science, definitely. Otherwise I would, if I didn't hold any kind of interest, then I probably wouldn't have even done any of this. But I'm at a point now where, for the past 2 years, I've been really struggling with my interests. Doesn't really sound like much of a struggle, but I've just been a bit confused because I've always wanted to go back and continue my degree because I started in science. I would have to finish doing some more modules in science. I basically am with the Open University. It's like distance learning in the UK anyway. I think other places can study with the Open University as well. But yeah, it's distance learning. It's all kind of self-study, basically. By self-study, I mean just going through things by yourself. And that's probably one of my preferred ways of studying anyway. But you also have to have a lot of motivation. And if your interests don't really line up with what you're studying, it can be a real struggle. And it can get quite stressful as well. And that's kind of what I found anyway for going from the past couple of months from going back, and realizing that there was a whole lot of there's loads of gaps in my knowledge because it was years ago since I last studied science. But what I've actually found is I almost regret, I do regret going back to study science this year, but I regret studying science, or I don't know, regret's just, it's such a strong word, and I think I can use my modules I've done to create a certificate qualification, so I can take away something from what I've done so far. But financially, I'm not sure how that's going to affect me, because I was using an undergraduate, basically a loan, a student loan, that is kind of the one that comes out of your paycheck every month after you've earned a certain amount of money. I think it's 27,000, I think, something like that. And so I was using that, and I've typically, I've used that for a little bit, so I'm not quite sure that I can go back and get a whole new degree that I don't have to pay for myself from, and that might be a bit tricky for me. I've basically queried about it with the student support team, and I'm hoping to hear back very soon, because I'm in a world of confusion right now. But what I've kind of got to the place where I found that the methods that I naturally study well with are not necessarily ones that are line up with science. I like to explore things, and my mind jumps from tangents to tangents, and when I'm learning stuff myself, and I spend a lot of my free time looking into the humanities, such as religion, history, just things like that, and it really interests me, the influences that made us who we are today like really fascinates me, and I really want to get a really great foundational knowledge of that. And so I do spend like, rather than actually doing my degree, which I should be doing, I focused on getting the minimum amount to pass that degree is what I've been focusing on, which isn't really a very good way to study. And yeah, when I'm studying random things by myself, I have a thought about something and I'll think about that for a bit, or I'll look at that for a bit, and then I'll go back to something else. And that's the kind of way that I study. And another way that I study is with questions. So rather than just reading lots of stuff, I'll have like thoughts, or like I'll be given questions, and then I need to figure out how to answer those questions. And a lot of the science studying that I've been doing is just reading lots of material and memorizing lots of material, and I am not the best at memorizing things like that. I'm much more an explorative kind of student. I find that science can be, in my opinion, I'm not sure what anybody else thinks about this, it can be quite restrictive, and especially like that's what I found with the modules that I studied. It's quite linear, and it's just kind of absent of like any kind of like wonderings, like exploration. And that's kind of where, that from my experience of what I've studied, that's where I'm at. And I think maybe when you come to like the higher levels, you'd probably get to explore that a little bit more. But yeah, at the moment it just, I basically I'm at a point where I just want to learn things about the world, and not necessarily through a scientific mindset all the time. I want to do it in the way that feels more natural to me, as well as gaining like different kinds of skills, and helping like improving my skills around researching, and even like writing and stuff like that. So yeah, I find actual pleasure through exploring ideas, and because of this, science doesn't really hold a lot of pleasure for me. It made sense for me to do it. It was more of a practical kind of thing, rather than what I actually wanted to do, what I'd actually enjoy. And sometimes I find it hard to do the things that I enjoy. And in the humanities, I find that your opinion really matters to an extent anyway. Whereas in science, your opinion, science is almost void of opinion. I mean, you can get like the kind of science where it's like, okay, there's a whole lot of stuff I could explore here, and I'm not going to do it, but you probably know the road I'm going down. But because of these reasons, and what sparks my interest, I'm trying to change my study plans. So yeah, wish me luck.